Welcome to the class on a very fascinating topic called Hebrew. This is a language course, and actually it is very narrow focused on only biblical Hebrew. And even within the biblical Hebrew, it is focused really only on reading and understanding and translating biblical Hebrew. So it's the passive knowledge of biblical Hebrew, not really active knowledge. Throughout the course, we may do a little bit of active knowledge of Hebrew, in other words, producing Hebrew language, speaking it, creating some Hebrew language. But mostly the main point of this class is knowing to read and translate Hebrew. And therefore, the number one most important thing is being able to read and understand the letters, the alphabet. So when it comes to the alphabet, there are a few things that you really have to focus on. The first and most important, obviously, is recognizing each character, each either consonant or vowel. And once you recognize these, you also need to know their pronunciation. In other words, how they sound like, how do you pronounce each word. Again, this applies to both consonants and vowels. So make sure that you know what letters look like. You can also learn to write them or type them these days. A lot of students use computers to type these letters. And second thing, know their sound, their pronunciation. Number 3 point here on this slide is grammatical terminology. Now, this is going to be helpful when you go to other textbooks, to other scholarly work, as they may use grammatical terminology. However, for actually understanding and really being able to get the main idea of the Hebrew, grammatical terminology is not going to help you very much. So if you do learn the grammatical terminology, make sure that you already recognize each character and already know their pronunciation. Each semester I have those few students who know the grammatical terminology very well, but they do not know the pronunciation. That is a very wrong approach, and it's going to go against you. It's going to make your life very difficult. The next very important thing is also the length and the group of vowels. So this does not apply to the consonant. It's mainly about the vowels. And throughout the beginning of this class, you will not see the value of it as much, but once we move on to verbs, and especially weak verbs, you will see that this is very, very important. So the sooner you memorize it, the better, the length and the group, and I'll explain that a little later in the next video. The final 2 points are Begat Kefat letters. I'll talk about the Dagesh Lene and Dagesh Forte, what it means, and the 3 rules of Karo letters. So in this short video, I will just focus on the consonants. I will go over how they look like. I will go over their sound and give you some examples of each. I will go over this very quickly, so if you need to, you can pause the video or rewatch, rewind some of these letters. So let's start with the first letter of the alphabet, which is called the Aleph. Again, you do not have to know the name. It is helpful, but I will not test you on the names of the grammatical terminology. However, you have to know the sound. And the sound for the Aleph, there is actually no real sound. It's a silent letter, so you pronounce it according to the vowel that goes with it. And we'll talk about the vowels in another video. So Aleph, it's silent. Now, all the letters in Hebrew can fit within a square box. So when you're trying to recognize or write these letters, you can look at a square box and how that letter fits. Aleph, you start on the top left and you draw a straight line all the way to the bottom right corner. And then you start on the top right and go almost to the middle, a little lower than middle, and then kind of go a little up and keep going all the way down to the left corner. So kind of like an X, except the one line that goes from the top right to bottom left is not really a straight line, but moves a little bit. An example of a word that you will see in your first vocabulary is word Elohim, which most of you probably already know. It means God. It's actually in plural, so it can also mean gods. Depending whether it's referring to the God of Israel, then it will be singular with capital G, or to the other gods, and then it's a lower cap with the S at the end. So here I pronounce that Aleph as an E, and that's really only because of the dots that are underneath, and that's the vowel. So the Aleph is a silent letter. The next letter of the alphabet is Bet. Now Bet has two different pronunciations according to the little dot that is in the middle, and the dot is called a dagesh. So when there is the dagesh, it's a hard pronunciation, and when there is no dagesh, it's a soft pronunciation. Bet would be therefore one of the Begat Kefat letters, and I will talk about it in a separate video. So the sound of Bet with a dagesh, the hard pronunciation, is B, like Benjamin or boy or black, right? B, Bet. An example here would be Ben, which means sun. Ben, which is sun. So the sound here is B. Okay, and this is how it fits within the square box. You can find these slides in your Learning Hub, so I will skip some of these quite fast, and then you can look at the slides that are on your Learning Hub. The next letter is still the Bet, but it is without the dagesh, and therefore the pronunciation is soft. The difference is that with the B, you close your lips, and with the soft pronunciation, the lips do not close. So therefore, the sound that you create is V, like Victor or Villa. So you close your lips for B with the dot in it. Without the dot, the sound is V, like Victor or Villa. Here's an example. Davar, which means a word or a thing. Davar. Okay, so the middle letter is V, and it's not pronounced dabar with a B, but with a soft V, davar, because there is no dagesh in it, or that dot in the center of the letter. And this is how it looks in the square box. The next is Gimel, G, like a girl or grammar. And here is how it sounds like. Gum, it's an example. Gum means also or indeed. G, gimel, for the word gum here as an example. The next letter is D. The grammatical terminology would be dalet. Again, you don't have to memorize all the grammatical terminology. It is helpful sometimes, but the main thing, the most important thing, is knowing the sound, and the sound here is D, like David or door. Okay, so David or door. Here is an example, davar, and we already seen this word, and it actually means the word or the thing. And you know the second letter, it's the bet, but it's the soft bet, right, without the dagesh. So the second sound will be V, and the first letter is D. Those two, which looks like little T's underneath, those are both A's. We'll talk about the vowels in different video. And so here the pronunciation will be davar, davar. Again, this is how it looks in the square box. The next letter is a very weak letter, and it can be so weak that when you see it at the end of a word, it is actually silent. However, when you see it in the middle or a beginning, it's definitely not a silent letter, and the pronunciation of it is H. It's basically a breath. Okay, so something like hey or human in English, or high, right? That that breath that comes out, that is the he. So the grammatical term is he, the sound is h. When it is at the end of the word, it is silent. Okay. Now sometimes there is a dad in the he. However, this is not the dagesh. So this is not a difference between the soft or hard pronunciation. The dad is called a mapik. And this just tells you basically that he at the end is used for a 3fs suffix. I will talk about it once we get to suffixes, which we will do in 2 weeks. Here's an example with a he at the beginning and at the end. Haya. Okay, so if you notice, the first letter is pronounced as h, okay, and the breath out. And we do have those two a's, which you already know. We've seen those examples. They look like little t's underneath. So with a ha, ya, and the he at the end is silent. So when you see the he at the end, you don't have to force it. You don't have to try to pronounce it. It's almost impossible to have some kind of a breath pronunciation because it's very, very silent. So no sound at the end. However, if you see it in the middle or at the beginning of a word, the sound is h. So haya. And here is how it looks like within the square box. The next letter is v. Now we already seen a letter that sounds the same, and the letter was the bet. The bet, the soft pronunciation of the bet is identical to this letter. So they may sound the same, but they're completely different letters. They have nothing to do together with each other. They're not interchangeable. They're completely different letters. They just happen to have the same sound. So the sound of this letter is V, like Victor or Villa. However, there is a little tricky thing with this letter because this letter can also function as a vowel. Okay, so as a vowel, it can function in two different positions. If there is a dot on top, it is not a consonant, it becomes a vowel, and it is a vowel O. So here the pronunciation is O, like more or dog. Okay, and if the dot is in the middle, the pronunciation is U and becomes again a vowel. This is not a consonant, a vowel U, like moon or book. Okay, so again, we have three sounds or three ways of reading this. If there is no dot above or in the middle, this is a consonant, and the consonant is V, like Victor. One way to recognize that this is a consonant, that it will have some kind of a vowel underneath, either the little T that we saw or some kind of a dot underneath. So when you see some vowel underneath, it's definitely a consonant. Now, if there is a dot on top, it is just a vowel, and the vowel is O. If there is a dot in the middle, it is again just a vowel, and the vowel is U. Do not pronounce this as vu, and do not pronounce this as vo. This is not v-o, this is just the vowel. Okay, here are the example. First, this is an example of a consonant. As you can see, there is a dot underneath, which is an E sounding vowel, and there is no dot on top or in the middle. So this is a consonant V. So the pronunciation will be Levi, Levi. Okay, this is like an English Levi, it's a name. Here's an example of a vowel where on top of the vav is a dot, and therefore this is a sound for O. So to read this, to pronounce this, would be bo. You know the first letter, it's B. It's the hard pronunciation for the bet, right? Because it has the dagesh in the middle. The last letter is silent, that's the aleph. And in the middle we have a vowel O. So the sound, the pronunciation of this would be bo. This is a verb and it means to come or to enter. And finally, a pronunciation that you could also figure out on your own here. The first letter is pronounced as h, right? That's we just covered that. The next one has the dot in the middle, therefore this is not a consonant, it's just a vowel u. And finally is a silent aleph. So the sound of this would be hu, hu. Okay? and this means he. In English, there is something a little funny how it comes with contrast to Hebrew. Who is he means she, and me is who. Again, who in Hebrew, in English means he in Hebrew, in English means she, and me in Hebrew, in English it means who, as a question mark. Okay, so that's the vav, and it can be just a vowel as well, and this is how it looks like within the square box. With some writing, especially when you do a handwriting, it can be just a straight line within the box. It does not have to have the little hook on the top, but it often does. The next letter is Zain, and it is very similar to vav, except it has a little roof on the top of the line. So notice the vav is just a straight line. It can have a little hook on the top to the left. However, when you look at the Zain, it actually has a clear separation. So it's a kind of a roof in an angle on the top, and then a straight line down. The sound of it is Z, like zebra or zeal, and here's an example. Z. Underneath we have a vowel which means e, and finally we have the silent he at the end. Remember, when the he is at the end, it's silent. So the pronunciation of this would be ze, ze, and it means this. The next one is a sound that stands out in Hebrew. If you listen to different languages and you don't know which one is which, Hebrew will stand out because of this sound. It's very unique, and they have a lot of this within their pronunciation, and it's kind of not a very pretty sound. To explain it, it's almost like when someone is trying to clear their throat. So it's very deep down in your throat, and the sound is okay. It's almost like when somebody is trying to clear their throat, like similar to a German okay, Bach, that sound at the end. We don't really have that in English. However, in Hebrew, it's even harder than in German. So it's not just a simple but it's really like so it depends on how you want to pronounce it. If you want to be very pure Hebrew sound, you can have a deep kind of a pronunciation, or just do it a little softer like the German h. Here's an example. You already know the final letter that is a he, and it's silent because it's at the end. The two little T looking things underneath, those are your two A's. And the first letter is the H. So the sound will be ha-ya, ha-ya, ha-ya. It means to live, to live. When people go to eat and they raise their glass, in English we say cheers or something like that. In Hebrew they say lachaim, which means to life. So chaim, that means lives, literally in plural. Lachaim, to lives. And chaya means to live. That's the verb of that word. Moving on to t, tet. We have two sounds that are for t, and we'll see the tav, which is the final letter at the end of this video. This one is t as time or type, and here is an example. We know the first letter already, that's ch. The two vowels underneath, they're both a. So cha. The next would be ta. Aleph is silent. And at the end we have the second tav, second t sounding. So chatat, chatat, sin. The next letter is the smallest. It's called yod. And you have an example in that in the New Testament, where we have that not even a iota, like something very, very short, will disappear, right? So this is yod, and it's written kind of like an apostrophe in English, okay? So the grammatical name is yod, the sound is y, like yes, or yesterday, that y sound, that is the yod. Now, just like the vav, remember the vav can be a vowel, so does yod. Okay, vav could have been o or u sounding vowel, and yod can also be a vowel. Now, the way you know the difference is if there is something underneath, some kind of a vowel underneath, or if there is a vowel that goes with that yod, that becomes a consonant. If there is nothing underneath, but there are some dots in front, that it will become a vowel. And I'll give you the example. So if this is a consonant, the sound is y, like yesterday, or yes. If this is a vowel like red, it will have two dots in front of it. So you will have two dots in front of the yod, and there will be nothing underneath the yod itself. And then the yod is not pronounced as y, but it's pronounced as e. Okay, so this becomes e, like in red. If there is only one dot in front, and again nothing underneath, the sound is e, like green. Okay, so two dots, e, one dot, e, and if there is an actual vowel underneath, the sound is y. So look at some examples. Now, this one, I can tell you that when that yod is at the front of a word, it's always a consonant. It will never be a vowel. So you cannot start a word in Hebrew with a vowel. And this yod does have a vowel with it, and the vowel is o. And you already know this vowel because you see that v, and it has a dot on top, and so you know that this is not a v, but this is an o. So this is a vowel, o. And finally we have a letter which is mem. We didn't cover that yet. Okay, so the sound of it will be y, o, m, yom. And yom means day. You know this word probably from something like Yom Kippur. Like you probably heard that, Yom Kippur. That means the day of covering, literally. Kippur means to cover. So Yom Kippur. Here's an example where there is nothing underneath and there are two dots in front, therefore the sound is e. Aleph is silent, so we start with e sound, and the final letter is n. So the sound will be n, n. And ein means there is not. One way to remember this is there ain't. Like in English, when some people say they ain't, that's what n means, there is not. And final example here, we already seen this word. The first letter we didn't cover it is le. The next is v. Remember that if that v would have a dot on top, it would be o. If it would have a dot in the middle, it would be u. But since there is no dot on top or in the middle, this is a consonant v. And finally, we have an e at the end. So levi, levi. The next is k. K. The name is kaf, k. And the sound is k, like kite or candy. Here's an example, key, key. And you already know the e sound. We have the yod and it has a dot in front, and therefore the sound is key. Remember that yod is not a consonant, it is not ki, because it has the dot in front, it is no vowel underneath. Now, k has also a soft pronunciation, and the sound of that is ch, like that ugly sound we already seen, or that not so nice sound. Okay, so we have a hard pronunciation, k, like candy, and a soft pronunciation, ch, like that not so pleasant sounding sound in Hebrew. And here is an example, achal, achal. Again, this aleph is silent, and we have that little t underneath, that's the a sound, so achal, achal. The k also has a final form, And with final forms, they are not tricky. There is no special sound. There is no some special meaning. They're really used to help you know where is the end of the word. So when that k or h is at the end of the word, it is written in a little different way. So instead of writing it like the opposite of a C in English, you write it kind of like a dalet, but it goes outside a square. So notice the dalet would be inside a square, but the final form of a kaf goes below the lines, it goes outside the square. And it is used only at the end of the word to help you know that that word is, that's the end of the word. There is no special meaning, there's no other special sound for that. Here is an example of that. Betoch, you know, b at the front, right? We didn't have the tav yet, but to, you know, the o sound, the vowel with the ta and that on top is just a vowel, but to, and at the end we have ch, betoch. Okay, it's just a kaf again at the end, no special meaning. It just means that that's the word and that word ends there. The next letter is the only letter that goes from the square box on the top. So if you look at the square, it actually starts above the line outside and then it finishes inside the square. The name is Lamed. The most important thing is the sound. The sound is L, like look or lake. And here is an example, Lo, Lo. We have a L, it has a vowel O with it, Lo. And Aleph, remember, is silent. Lo means no or not, or it's just a negation of a verb. The next is M, like mother or magic, M. Grammatical name is Mem. The terminology is Mem, but the sound is M. The example here is Melech, and here you already know all the letters. So you know the Me, the dots underneath, all of them, the sound is E, those are E vowels. So if Me, then we have the L, which is head, Me, Le, and finally we have the final kaf, and you know the sound of that is Ch, Melech, and it means king. Melech means king. Mem also has a final form, just like kaf had, and here the final form just basically means that the gap that is on the bottom left is closed. Okay, so you have a mem and it has a little gap there. In the final form, that gap will be closed. Here is an example, Elohim, and you already seen this word. It means God or gods. And in this case, you know actually all the letters. We have a silent aleph, then we have a lamet, then we have a he, then we have the yod, which is not a consonant, this is just a vowel because it has nothing underneath and it has that one dot in front, so it's the vowel E, Elohim at the end, M, final mem. Next letter is nun, grammatical terminology, nun. The sound is n, like now or number, n. And here is an example, Natan, Natan. This one also has a final form, and the final form here just goes outside the box. So if you notice, the n stays within the box and it has that little hook on the top and bottom. When you have it as a final form, you have a hook on the top, but then it just goes straight out, straight down outside the box. Here is an example, Natan. Natan means to give. It's a verb, to give. So you have the nun at the front and nun at the end, Natan. Next is Samek. S. The sound is S, like sun or smile or snake. S, Samek. It is kind of like an O in English, except it has a little tiny hook on the top left. So when you write it, it's like an O in English with a little hook on the top left. Here is an example. K, at the front we have kaf, right? And it has the dad or the dagesh in it, and therefore it's the hard pronunciation. So it's not a ch, it's k. The vowels, both of them are e sounding, so it will be ke, se, and the final letter is f. Kesef means silver, can also mean money. They can say kesef as some kind of a currency or silver, because they use silver as form of payment. Next one is the second silent letter. We had aleph, and now we have ayin. It's also silent. In Old Hebrew, they would have some kind of a pronunciation, and there are certain areas where they still kind of sort of pronounce ayin. It's a sound that is made deep down in the throat. It's kind of like ah. But for most part in the modern Hebrew, they do not pronounce ayin, and it's a silent letter. So it is going to be pronounced according to a vowel underneath. Here is an example. The vowel underneath is a, so the sound would be here, The final mem at the end, which we already covered. So would be people. Next is p. And notice I wrote it here with a dagesh because that dagesh is important. We'll have two different pronunciation here as well. So far we had b with two different pronunciation, b and v. Then we had k with k and ch. And now we have a p. So the hard pronunciation with the dagesh in it is p, like Peter or park. And here's the example. You know all the letters here. The first vowel is a, the next vowel you actually already know as well. That's the yod with the e sound, right? So the pronunciation would be panim, and it means face. So the soft pronunciation, you can probably already figure out, would be, instead of closing your lips, p, you do the same kind of a pressured breath out, p, but without closing those lips, and therefore the sound will be f, p, f. Okay, you push the breath out with closed lips, and the result is p. That's the hard pronunciation with the dagesh in it. Without the dagesh, it's f, like Philip or photo. And here is an example of a word which you may have heard in some sermons or read in some books. Nefesh. Nefesh. The first letter you already know, n, nefesh. Nefesh means life. Nefesh. Both of these have a final form, and just like with the k, remember the kaf, it was written outside a box instead of in, you went straight out. That's the same thing here. So you have the little hook under that reversed C. So it's just like a kaf, reverse C with a little hook. But here, just like with the kaf, you keep going outside a box instead of curving back under. So those are the final forms. Again, final forms are not that special. You don't have to be scared of those. They just tell you that this letter is used at the end of the word ends. Now in the original, sometimes there would be no spaces between different words, and so these letters would help you to know where to separate words one from the other. Here is an example, af. Okay, this would be the f, because there is no dagesh in it. So the sound here would be af. Remember, aleph is a silent letter, and the meaning of af means nose. It also has a secondary meaning, which is anger, because they associate the redness of nose with anger. So when you get angry, your nose gets kind of reddish, and therefore af can also refer to anger. The next letter is ts, tsadi, ts, like tsunami or nuts, ts. Okay, Here is an example. Mitzrayim, Mitzrayim, Mitzrayim. Now notice that here the yod, if you look at the yod, it has a dot underneath, and therefore it is a consonant y. This is not just a vowel because the dot is not in front. Okay, so don't confuse those two. When the dot is in front, this yod would be just a sound e, mitzrim. But this is not the case. Here, the yod is underneath, the dot is underneath the yod, and therefore this yod is a full consonant y with the sound e with it. Mitzrayim, Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim means Egypt. If you go to Egypt today, they speak Arabic, which is related to Hebrew, and in Arabic, Egypt is called Mitzra. So here it's really just a plural form of Egypt. In Arabic it's singular, Mitzra, and in Hebrew it's plural, Mitzrayim. If you studied your archaeology or your history of Egypt, you probably know why in Hebrew it's plural, because we had two Egypts. We had an Upper Egypt and a Lower Egypt, so it was kind of like US of A or European Union where you have different states, right? So in Egypt you had an Upper and a Lower Egypt. Therefore, in Hebrew, it's referred to Mitzrayim, while in Arabic, it's just one country, Mitzra. And it also has a final form, just like with the other, most of the other final forms, except for the mem. Instead of curving those letters underneath, you go straight out. So remember the kaf, the reverse C. Instead of curving it back under, you go straight down. Same with the pe. Instead of curving it under, that's the reverse C with the little hook on top. You go straight out under. And same here. Notice how the tzade, the regular tzade, is curved back under. Here it's not. It doesn't go back under. It just goes straight out under, straight outside the box. And here's an example. Etz. Etz. Etz means tree. Etz. Notice the ayin at the front, we covered it already, that's a silent letter. The next sound is k, cough, k like candy or kite. And here is an example, kara. Kara means to call. Kara, to call. K, like kite. The next sound is resh, resh. Now in Hebrew, that R is pronounced in the throat, kind of like in German, r, r. You can also pronounce it like in Spanish, r, with the tongue. So in Hebrew, in a real true Hebrew, if you go to Israel, they'll pronounce it in the throat, r, r, not with the tongue. But if you don't know how to do that, you can do the Spanish r, r, r with the tongue. Okay, so either r in the throat or r with the tongue. And here is an example. Kara, kara, kara means to call. And we are almost at the end. We have one letter which has two sounds depending on where the dot is. When the dot is on the left, the sound is s. The letter is called sin. And when the dot is on the left, it's the s, like sun or smile or snake. Notice that we already had a letter that had the exact same sound, the samek, right? Samek and sin have the same sound, completely different letters. Have nothing to do with each other, they just happen to have the same sound. So samek, s. Sin, also s. Same sound, okay, but different letters. Here is an example. Asa, asa. You know all the letters here. First one, a in silent. Those T underneath, they are a sounding vowels. Asa. And the he at the end is always silent. Asa, asa. That means to do. To do or to make something. Now, if you put the dot on the right, the s becomes sh. And instead of sin, now we have shin, sh, shy or shadow, sh for shy or shadow. Here is an example, Shem. Shem means name, Shem, name, okay, Shem. Now, one way to remember this, there is a fun little saying, sin is never right. Okay, sin is wrong or sin is on the left. So when you have it on the left, that is a s. When you have it on the right, it's sh. So sin is never right. Sin is wrong. And the final letter is letter T, tav. Now we also had a letter that sounded exactly the same, again completely different letter. We had tet, and this is tav. This is the final letter of the alphabet, T. The sound is T like time or tower, exactly the same as tet for the sound. And here is an example, bait, bait. So here you already know everything. You know the B, you know the A. The yod, you should know already that this is not a vowel because it has a vowel underneath. Yes, it has the dot underneath, so it is a sound consonant y. The vowel underneath, the little dot, is e. So ba yi, and the final letter is the ta, which is the t. Bayit. And bayit means house. For example, Bethlehem, that's from the same word, bayit becomes bet. Bethlehem is a house of bread, or Bethlehem, right? That's the place where Jesus was born. Bethlehem means house of bread, and it's from this word bayit. So those are all your consonants, and in the next video I will go over the vowels, and then one more video I will show you some of the similarities and kind of help you understand some of the tricky consonants and tricky vowels.